Yeah.
Greetings to all. Today, I am Udit Ahuja along with Animesh Upadhyaya. Welcome you to yet another episode of the Law Culture of the Desk. Today, we have an eminent advocate, senior advocate with us who will enlighten us about the contempt jurisdiction of the court. He is none other than senior advocate Sanjay Hegde. He has a long standing and a long standing in the court, in the Supreme Court of India. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Coming right to the theme of today's conversation, sir, my question to you was peculiar to the fact that do you think that Prashant Bhushan, in light of the present circumstances, was given a fair hearing, considering the fact that he raised a valid ground for recusal, which wasn't paid any heed to?
Well, he has gone ahead with the hearing. It's for him to challenge the fairness or unfairness of it. My opinion really does not matter. Of course, there have been better minds than mine, people like former Chief Justice Lodha, who said, what was the hurry to hear it during this particular point of time when the pandemic was on, when it was a virtual court, and that this was a matter which was best left for a time when there was an open court hearing. You see, there are several things that influence the judicial calculus of judging, as well as the lawyer's calculus of advocacy. All that gets lost in a virtual court. People are looking into cameras, they're trying to follow through earphones exactly what the other person is saying. A lot of non-verbal communication that happens in a courtroom when it's eye-to-eye communication between counsel and judge, between counsel and between the judge and the contemner, all that just could not happen in this case. So was the hurry worth it? Should it have been taken up immediately, no sooner? Because if I remember rightly, the tweets were in July. We are in August, and there's already a conviction.
Correct, sir. Correct.
So, coming to the 108-page judgment of the Supreme Court in the case of Prashant Bhushan, sir, a few days back, many scholars have criticized that on the grounds that the judgment has everything but law, since it fails to make a detailed analysis of Prashant Bhushan's reply. What are your views on the same, sir?
Well, a judgment is a judgment of the court. Every judgment has its plus points as well as its minus points. Yes, the judgment very carefully notes down a lot of cases, and that in this case this happened, in that case that happened. But in terms of actual analysis of the case itself before the court, it says that one part of the tweet may be an opinion. We are not going to get into a political debate on that. But this part is certainly wrong. It is false to the knowledge of the petitioner. It seems to imply that a court in lockdown is a court which is entirely locked out, which is non-functional altogether. Bhushan's tweets could be read in more ways than one. Bhushan filed, as you said, a rather comprehensive affidavit. I don't see any analysis in the judgment saying that Bhushan in his affidavit contains so and so, so and so, so and so. His counsel during the hearing referred to the affidavit and said this, but we think this is not right. Maybe the court thinks that all that is not necessary. What is called for is an opinion or finding that the tweets tend to scandalize the court, and therefore criminal contempt has been found.
So, my question peculiar to you was that in one of your interactions with Live Law, you have stated that I will quote, contempt is a double-edged weapon. When used correctly, it can at times restore the authority of the court. Sir, my question is, how do you think, or how do you think the Supreme Court shall define this term if used correctly? Because that is a very vague and an open-ended term.
See, this is, I've been writing elsewhere also.
Yes, sir.
The point is, what is correct use of contempt? Contempt, criminal contempt can happen when a court's proceedings are obstructed. For instance, Justice Karnan first began by just marching into a fellow judge's court and saying, take care of this, and all the others. So then he got transferred elsewhere. From there, he started passing judicial orders, orders of arrest and things like that. That was obviously something which was designed to prevent the working of courts in general. Yes, so contempt was made out. You do need the weapon of contempt. But then if you swish around the sword all the time and say, oh, off with his head, that's contempt. Off with this fellow's hands, that's contempt. Stitch up his lips, that's contempt. That is not how it is meant to be used. It is meant to be used in very rare cases. And Lord Denning, I think, somewhere wrote that, the foundations for respect of the courts should not be the contempt law. Those are other foundations which are much firmer. The contempt law is used basically as a management tool. You can't have somebody sitting in a court and shouting slogans. That would be contempt in the face of the court. That would be an obstruction of court proceedings. For those things, yes. But somebody somewhere on some social media says something which could be interpreted more than one way. Yeah, I think it should have been struck down.
Yes, sir.
Correct, sir.
So, what leads to obstruction or an impediment in the functioning of the court or dispensation of the justice?
No, I've given you examples. No, you say a court is deciding an issue. Then can you have people inside the courtroom shouting slogans and not allowing the judge to proceed or not allowing the court to proceed? Or supposing a witness is deposing, somebody threatens the witness from within the courtroom itself. Anything which happens in the face of a court which threatens to derail its gravity and solemnity of the proceedings itself, that would be contempt. There's a judgment, if I remember rightly, called R.K. Garg versus State of Himachal in the 80s, which records the contempt committed by a lawyer who got so angry that he took off his shoe and threw it at the judge. That's exactly an obstruction. That is the kind of thing that contempt law is designed for. Here, these are two tweets which are certainly not in the face of the court. Now, if it is brought to the notice of the court by someone and it is brought to the notice of the court in an incompetent petition without the permission of the Attorney General, the court should normally have said, please go ask the Attorney General if a case is made out. After that, we'll look into it. No, that is not what was done. Here, this was then taken up suo motu. If an incompetent complaint is made, then can it become the basis of a suo motu proceeding? It's not as if the judges said that, we were scrolling down our Twitter timeline and this thing suddenly popped up and caused an obstruction in what we were doing in holding of a court. I don't think that's what happened.
So coming to the aspect of criminal contempt, it is generally being said these days that this aspect of criminal contempt is undermining the freedom of speech and expression, the fundamental right of India, of the citizens of India, that the
Yes.
sacrosanct fundamental rights of the citizens of India. Do you think that this crosses the aspect of criminal contempt, crosses the line of the fundamental speech, and it violates that freedom?
See, the Constitution itself puts contempt, a law regarding contempt of court, as one of the reasonable restrictions on the freedom of speech. So it allows for a law to be made. Now, the law has to be applied reasonably for it to become a reasonable restriction.
Correct.
So therefore, if the Contempt of Courts Act is operated in a manner for events that it is supposed to take care of, then it would certainly not be an impediment to freedom of speech. But if, on the other hand, if it is used in an overbroad fashion, then the Supreme Court, you must remember, in Shreya Singhal, said that
Yes, sir.
66A, the words are so vague and are so overbroad that we have no option but to strike it down. So you can't have sections in one act being deemed to be overbroad and then use the same kind of overbroad interpretation elsewhere when it comes to a question of defining what is criminal contempt in the face of the court.
So the same overbreadth aspect can be brought into this section subclause of the criminal contempt, where it is said that scandalizes or tend to scandalizes, obstructs
Yes.
or tends to obstruct. So the defining words are very vague.
Yes.
So do you think they are violative of the overbreadth doctrine of the freedom of speech?
No, you would have to interpret it or give it a restricted reading. See, because you can't, it was obviously, those words were obviously used by the legislative draftsman simply because you cannot contemplate all the ways that somebody can cause criminal contempt of court. I think there was a recorded case where somebody put in laughing gas through the ventilation chute of a court.
Oh.
You just can't say that only this specific act is contempt, this is not contempt. So therefore, you needed some play in the word. But that play cannot be used so elastically that everything and its grandfather can be swept in case the court so determines that what has been said is unpardonable. It may be socially unpardonable. It may be in very bad taste. But using criminal contempt to deprive a person of his liberty just because the court feels affronted, that is not on.
Correct, sir.
Correct.
So, what is the recourse that you suggest the Supreme Court should take to rectify the upheaval caused?
I am too small a man to suggest to the Supreme Court what it should do. The Supreme Court knows what it can do. The Supreme Court is a court of record. It has vast powers under 129, under 142 to do what it should. But this leads me to another thing that I've always thought. You see, our Supreme Court, as a constitutional court, probably started splitting in the late 60s after all those little benches of 2 judges, 3 judges began to be formed. And so there is legitimate criticism now that, there are 14 courtrooms, so there are 14 Supreme Courts. And therefore, the solemnity of an institution sitting en banc, like the US Supreme Court, which has 9 judges, and you generally know that 3 or 4 of them will vote one way, 3 or 4 of them will vote the other way. And then there are those people in between who could go either way. But it is where fewer cases are heard and doctrines are written with great deal of care and not easily rewritten thereafter, where there is great value which adheres to precedent. Sometimes I think that in our court system, we tend to have people, judges and lawyers who first sort of decide that this is the justice of the case. This is where we want the final decision to go. And then things start getting worked backward to get to that result. That does not appeal to my mind as sensible working for any constitutional court.
Correct, sir. Correct.
So,
So, do you think
lastly, what do you think will be the repercussions of this action on the Supreme Court, on the bar?
Again, let me tell you a rather famous story, which Mr. Fallinaraman has written in his book about the days of the emergency, when Mr. S.T. Desai, former Chief Justice of Gujarat, and then practicing in the Supreme Court in Delhi, was seated in the library next to Mr. Daftari, Mr. C.K. Daftari, who was the second Attorney General of India. And it was early in the morning, and Mr. Nariman happened to be sitting there watching the proceeding, watching these two old men just generally prepare for the day. And S.T. Desai looked at Mr. Daftari and said, Chandubai Bolo. And Mr. Daftari, with a twinkle in his eye, still adjusting his pipe, looked back at S.T. Desai and said, Pehla tame bolo. So he was waiting for Mr. Daftari for Mr. Desai to say the first thing. And that, I fear, is the kind of effect which will happen in the bar with this judgment. Everybody will be waiting for somebody else to say the right thing first. That is not who we are as lawyers.
correct, sir? Correct. Very correct.
Yes, sir. So that's all for today's episode. And thanks a lot, sir, that you spared time from an extremely busy schedule. And yes,
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you all.
yes,
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you so much.
thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Visit.